Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Oh, well. Okay. Let me just get all the technical difficulties straight. Okay. So I guess I'm ready. Should you be?
Yep, I'm good.
All right. So, Mr. Nolan, first off, I'd like to express how grateful I am for the opportunity to speak with you and conduct an interview about your music and progressive symphonic rock. I have always perceived you as the mastermind of progressive expression, and I have spent countless hours listening to Arena, Pendragon, Shadowland, and other projects of yours. It is truly an honor. Uh, First of all, I would like to ask you whether you are comfortable with me recording the whole interview and then putting the fragments of it in my presentation for the sixth Biennial International Conference of Progressive Rock.
Yeah, of course. No problem.
Okay, great. So, as you can see, I am surrounded by the works of yours, and I am also wearing the T-shirt you signed during the Arena Geek in Piekary Śląskie back in 2022. So,
right.
so yeah. So the interview and your answers to the questions will help me with the development of my thesis and of mine and in the research. So, to begin with, throughout your career, you have successfully created or participated in multiple and various artistic progressive projects and bands, Pendragon, Arena, Shadowland, just to name a few. Does the progressive approach towards creating music come naturally once a composer tries to unleash himself fully and create an original, mature piece of music? Or does one need to always keep in mind the idea of ever-flowing change and unusual approach towards artistry to create progressive music?
Well, I think I landed in this genre of music as a result of my own particular musical upbringing. My parents were both music teachers, so that gave me a bit of an advantage, I think, in early years. And then I went on to do the whole, university study and everything. So I went down a very classical music approach, and I think having gone down that particular route, in many ways, the sort of idea of symphonic or progressive rock kind of made more sense to the way that I thought about composition. So I think that's what kind of guided me into that particular area. But I think also within progressive rock, there are kind of two kinds. There is the literally the wish to progress, as its name would suggest. But I also think there is a sort of a sound that is progressive rock. And some bands and artists are comfortable just settling in that sound and staying right there. Some artists tend to kind of want to push outwards and onwards in different directions. So it kind of depends a little bit on that. It's a big umbrella.
I understand. As you have just mentioned, you have got both bachelor and master degrees in music. So, do you feel like academic education in music, composition, orchestration, and conducting helps in creating extravagant progressive pieces, or is there a threat of being conditioned to create more by the book rather than exploring the unknown and possibly using the methods contradictory to the academic teaching and understanding music?
I think when I first started getting involved with rock music, some of my sort of more classical tendencies tended to clash. There was sort of when you study music and you do certain things, you learn about rules, if you like, rules of composition, rules of harmony and counterpoint. And I think that one of the things that goes out the window when you get involved with rock are some of those rules. So I had to kind of get used to that. But then it was just a question of blending the two disciplines into one. For me, it's been very beneficial because I'm able to kind of visualize harmony. So it makes life a lot easier when doing backing vocals or something like that. And the same thing applies that I can kind of construct kind of structures of pieces a little bit more from what I know and understand from the kind of classical side. It enables me to see music on a larger scale than perhaps your traditional pop song might be, you know, verse, chorus, instrumental chorus, fade, or whatever. You know, these structures that I studied when I'm studying symphonies or operas or all the rest of that stuff then become relevant and help me to kind of put together things which I see as working for me in the world of progressive rock. I should also point out, in many ways, I don't think of myself as, you know, a composer of progressive rock or symphonic rock. To me, I'm just a composer. You know, I've been sort of put into that area because of the things, obviously, that I'm involved in.
All right. So I would like to ask you about the creative process, because progressive pieces and many other, as you have mentioned, symphonic rock and other genres that you are, well, familiar with, consist of many complicated elements and which intertwined together make an expressive, changing experience for a listener. And throughout your music career, you have successfully created your own original music style, which resonates in the music that you have been creating. And also, you have been chosen the best keyboard player by Classic Rock Society in many years. So, from a perspective of a very experienced musician, what makes progressive rock progressive?
Well, that's a tough one. I think, well, initially, I think it's about the structure and intent of the piece. As I say, I mean, a lot of people will expect a song to be much more formulaic, and therefore, generally, you know, that you're dealing in smaller, bite-sized chunks in the world of pop music and such like. Progressive rock tends to spread those structures out a lot more. The landscape is bigger. Things tend to be more epic, not necessarily in depth, but in size. So it's not uncommon for people in you know, progressive rock to write a song that demands, you know, to be 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 minutes long. Now I think that's a danger sometimes. But for me, a song takes as long as it needs to take. And I'm quite happy writing a 2-minute song as I am writing a 20-minute song. It depends on the subject matter and the heart and soul of what we're trying to put across, or what I'm trying to put across. There is a danger in progressive rock, which, you know, as a genre, it comes with its trappings, and somehow people believe that the rule is that the song should be long, and then you get a lot of repetition and a lot of meandering, which I you know, personally, I'm not that keen on. But in theory, that I think the heart of progressive rock is the fact that the structures are different. The approach to the composition is different. For me, it's always been about composing and not jamming as well. I'm not saying that's a rule of progressive rock, because some bands do kind of work together and construct their stuff you know, together as a band. Most of the stuff that I've ever been involved in is a much more controlled process.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, something about storytelling. Many progressive artists, including you, create whole conceptual albums which are built on a story which is told through music, or use another artistic medium such as literature to make it a fundament of their piece of music. For example, your The Hound of the Baskervilles is based on the book by Arthur Conan Doyle, or Song of the Wildlands is inspired by the early English story of Beowulf and Grendel. In some interviews, you have also mentioned that you are fascinated with Victorian literature. So why is storytelling so connected to the progressive music?
Well, again, I can only really speak for myself. For me, storytelling and pictures and visualizations are absolutely fundamental to what I do. I've only ever written about 1 or 2 pieces of abstract music. If I haven't got a kind of like a picture or a mood or a flavor in my head, I don't know where to go. But the moment you say to me, right, Clive, imagine it's 1888, you're in the streets of London, it's foggy, it's dark, there's a full moon trying to get through the fog, and there's a shadow in the distance. Right, now I can write you a piece of music. You know, to me, visualizations make it, if you were to say to me, it's a post-apocalyptic world, the whole world is living in a new ice age, and everyone is freezing cold and living in furs, and everything snaps and it's brittle because of the ice. Well, again, you see, to me, I can hear bells and metallic sounds, and I immediately know kind of where to go with something like that. So for me, the story, the mood, the atmosphere is a very, very important part of the music, and in turn the lyrics as well. So for me, it has to be about that. Not everybody goes down that route. I mean, you know, progressive rock can also be very much about a display of technique. It can be all about the scales and arpeggios. It can all be about the ability of the performers and the showmanship of sort of excellent sort of players on keyboards and guitars and what have you. For me, it's always been about the song and the composition of the music around the song, or you know. So, but again, progressive rock, it's a big umbrella. You know, you've got room for all sorts of different approaches, I think.
All right, so you draw your inspiration from such pictures, such stories, and the overall atmosphere of the piece you want to create.
Well, I mean, like you said, Song of the Wildlands is a perfect example. I mean,
yeah, which is behind me over there.
Absolutely, I can see it. I started doing some more work in Norway with a bunch of musicians and people over there, and as a result of that, I started getting more into the whole Viking thing. And then I started sort of, you know, I thinking, well, wouldn't it be interesting to do something with that kind of a flavor? And I was actually going to be writing my third Alchemy musical, third one of those. I'm literally editing some of the final bits just before I came to talk to you, actually. And I thought, well, what about if I set some of this story in Norway, just because of the fact that I've been working with these guys, and it would be nice to kind of include them in a sort of virtual way. And then I thought, well, okay, so the part of the story that happens over there, perhaps it could have like a Viking flavor. And I thought, well, what's that? And I started looking online and looking up Viking music and bumping into some fantastic music, which I've really enjoyed. Wardruna being an example. You know, and Dunelm and not Dunelm, what are they called? Danheim, sorry.
Danheim.
Furniture shop, I think. So and just listening to that stuff really excited me, and I thought, wow, this is great. So I wrote a piece of music some years ago intended for this musical, and it's still in there. But it was a slightly, I don't know how to describe, a naive starting point for the whole Viking thing. But then I got more into it and started learning about the psalmodicon and all these wonderful nyckelharpa and all these instruments. And then it sort of started to make much more sense, you know, what I call the Viking instruments. I know some of these instruments weren't around then, but it's what a lot of these bands use to kind of put across that sort of flavor. And then I thought, well, actually, yeah, I'd like to do an album of this. And that's where Song of the Wildlands came from. I thought, well, the most suitable piece for me to do would be, the oldest English poem, which is Beowulf. It's about a Viking. So I thought that can't be done for, appropriation or whatever they call it nowadays, cultural appropriation. So I thought, and it's Beowulf. It's a great story. I mean, I know, Marillion fans will know
Grendel.
A bit of it, but Beowulf is a whole saga. When you get the book, well, I haven't got it near me, but it's a big book. It'll take you about 3 or 4 hours to read. It's a poem, and Beowulf doesn't just kill Grendel, and he fights Grendel, he fights his mother, he fights a dragon, he fights various sea beasts. Well, he fights anybody really, it's a wonderfully epic story. And I thought, well, that sounds great. And for me, also, nobody knows what Viking music sounds like. Not really. There's very little written about it. There's certainly no real evidence. I mean, obviously, we can tell from the kind of instruments that existed then. But the beauty of it is that, these bands and artists who produce this stuff, I'll call it Viking music, they are interpreting an idea. And I love that idea because, I could do the same. I could interpret an idea. So I took the instruments, frame drums, and as I said, psalmodicon, nyckelharpa, tagelharpa, all these wonderful instruments, as a layer of flavor, which immediately kind of helps to kind of, again, that visualization thing. And I thought in my case, I would make it more cinematic. So, I thought, right, well, we'll throw in an orchestra. And then I decided to kind of have the 4 singing soloists and then the choir to add more kind of atmosphere to the whole thing. I thought, well, if I get them to sing in Anglo-Saxon, in Old English, that will give it even more flavor. So I then had to find an expert in language, and there aren't that many of them out there. And I found a guy, Christopher Monk, great name for the job. And he helped me translate into Old English for the chorus, and then give me phonetics so the chorus could understand what they're going to sing. That was a bit of a complicated business, but again, that's what sort of drove me. It's that vision and the storytelling. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And a choir of over 100 people, right? And layers of voices.
Yes, a lot of voices. Yeah.
And it is truly impressive, by the way.
I should point out, the first performance of that is going to happen about 25 yards away from where I'm sitting right now, because I'm building a Viking mead hall, literally just out of view, and we're going to put on the first weekend of sort of performances and stuff in September. So I've just made the tickets available just now, literally yesterday, I think. Anyway, but so we are going to perform that, and that's going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of visuals and inspiration, it is worth mentioning and underlining that you are also connected to the world of theater and musicals. For example, you are the creator of the musical whose premiere took place, by the way, in Poland in October 2007. There are also bands which introduced theater to their performances. For instance, Marillion, mentioned before, Genesis, Red Sand, RPWL. Do you think theater and theatralization is so much? Why do you think theater and theatralization is so much connected to the progressive approach towards music?
Well, again, I suspect that's come as a result of some of the early bands and artists that just, that became part of the description of progressive rock. I mean, obviously Genesis and Peter Gabriel springs to mind. He had a theatrical bent, and by bringing that in, other bands were thinking, hey, that's a good idea, why don't we do that? I think it just all spurned from a few people kind of putting on a hat or a mask or whatever it was. But I do think again, when you've got a song that explores a little bit more in terms of layers and landscape, it's longer, it goes further, it's not just a kind of verse chorus structure, then you've got room to be a bit more theatrical. You've got time to paint the song in other ways, whether it's a fantastic lighting show or video or whatever your thing happens to be. I'm not saying you can't do that with a straight down the line pop song, but I'm just saying, you've got obviously bigger structures to work with. It kind of makes that more possible. Maybe that helps to lend towards theatre. I don't know. I mean, to me, theatre has always been very much part of my life, because from a very the earliest things I can remember are listening to musicals on sort of the old vinyls that my parents had. And, I didn't even know what the stories were. I kind of made the stories up myself to go with the music I was hearing. But it ingrained itself in my sort of DNA from the earliest point. And, to me, theatre's brilliant because you've got everything. You've got the visual, you've got costume, you've got scenery, you've got dance, you've got singing, you've got talking. It doesn't really, it's all in there. So it's a kind of something that particularly appeals to me anyway. I mean, I'd be doing that regardless of whether I was progressive rock or not.
All right. And in the era of AI, which can, on the go, create a piece of a certain length with certain instruments which are available for free, do you think that in the following years, the live acts, the gigs and concerts will be even more popular than they are right now because of the improvisation a human being can do and a robot cannot, or artificial intelligence? Or is it just going to progress even further and theatralization is, not going to be as popular as it is right now in the progressive circles?
Well, I mean, AI is a fantastic tool as long as it's a tool. And obviously, it's perfectly obvious that it's becoming more and more of something that we're leaning on. I mean, I hate to sound a bit like the sort of second Terminator film, but that's kind of like, feels a little bit like that's the direction it's all going in. But the one thing that gives me a certain amount of hope is when I hear AI created music, it's immaculate. And that's the problem in a way. It's kind of soulless, and you can think you can hear it, just like AI generated artwork. You can sort of see it. Now, of course, that doesn't mean to say I wouldn't be fooled, but generally speaking, I very often sort of say that's AI, and it is. It's particularly with music. I think it's obeying all the rules, but in a way, a composer who, be it Bach or be it Beethoven or be it anyone, doesn't obey all the rules. And also it has to come from a slightly different place. So I think that AI is a fantastic tool that could help us do what we do better. Would it replace us? Well, I mean, it all depends how lazy human beings decide to become. But of course, your point of the theatre thing, unless the robots become so fantastically realistic, we're going to need humans, if nothing else, to be on stage to prance around doing the musicals. So maybe I'm still in the right area.
All right, okay, I get it. Just to change the topic for a second, or maybe not. Not so long ago, you were on a tour with Arena promoting the new, truly excellent, by the way, album Theory of Molecular Inheritance. Soon, you will be touring with Pendragon, and I was lucky enough to interview you right before your rehearsals. Therefore, I have a question about the live aspect of progressive music. Is progressive music meant to be purely for seated shows during which people listen carefully, or should there be some sort of connection with the audience resulting in people more actively taking part in the gig?
Well, actually, I think there's room for both, and I think it depends on what the thing is. So, for example, in my case, I think when I go out with the bands like Pendragon or Arena, we are primarily there to entertain. And on that entertainment, that demands a connection with the audience, and that demands a certain element of energy. So I think that's why it can work in a club, and sometimes it can work with a standing club style audience much more effectively than it can with a seated audience. Now, on the other hand, I recently did a gig with performing Rise of Medici, which is another album I did, which is kind of, I don't know, Renaissance meets rock, if you like. And we did a sort of performance because it was all about budget. We didn't do like a full band with drums and everything. We used backing tracks, and we had the four main singers, and we had a guitarist doing all the sort of rock stuff. And we performed in a small theatre in Holland, and it was a seated audience. And I thought, well, actually, that was the perfect situation. That was exactly the kind of event that needed a seated audience. They could sit there, enjoy the music, hopefully the performance, take time to soak it up in a particular kind of way. It was quite theatrical. There was an element of costume, a few props together, so it worked. So I think it depends on what the thing is. But, if we're going out there with a rock band, then generally speaking, we hope that there's an energy that we can connect the audience with.
Mm-hmm. All right. As we have established before, atmosphere is very important in progressive music and progressive approach towards music. And you are also a lyricist and a poet. So beautiful lyrics concerning existential dilemmas and indulgences, love, loss, place in the world, life, death, and problems people need to face are the foundation of progressive expression. For instance, Theory of Molecular Inheritance, a long tale about humans' place in the world, right? So do you think that in the world of vulgarization and simplification of language, the overall distraction caused by social media, worshipping the lowest instincts, and lack of spiritualism in mainstream music can cause the progressive music slow but effective push to the complete underground? Because the message hidden in it can be too hard and too hard for more and more people to understand.
Yeah, I think that can be a problem. I think to a lot of people outside of the genre, they would describe progressive rock as pretentious. That's one word I've heard used over the years, and sort of it goes around in circles. I think that and actually, to be fair, some of it is. I mean, again, this to me is very important that the stuff that's written comes from the heart, not just the head. And I think the danger with progressive rock is it can be over intellectualized, and that I think is not a strength of the genre. I think you've got to have something that will communicate some kind of a message to people. But I think it's true that I think it's a mistake to think the whole world loves music, though. This is the thing. I think that's a really big mistake. People always say, oh, well, it's really underground, and it's not. Okay, obviously the sort of pop genre is much bigger and all the rest of it, but your average bloke on the street doesn't necessarily even like music. He might associate a good time with music. You remember when we went clubbing and we were dancing to such and such, but it isn't necessarily the sort of thing that he'd walk down first thing in the morning on a Sunday morning and put on his CD player or his stream or whatever. I think it's kind of a fallacy to imagine that we're failing somehow because not everybody in the world loves it, because I think not everyone in the world loves music at all anyway. So it depends how you look at it. If you're going to take the trouble to listen, and not everyone's going to want to do that, then progressive rock is quite an interesting area of music to listen to. But not everyone's going to want to do that.
All right. Okay. So I am currently surrounded by vinyl records and CDs, and I've got a question about collecting such ways of collecting music. What I mean is that in the current times, most people listen to music through streaming devices, through streaming systems, and they tend to have so-called playlist mentality. So they do not listen the albums from start to the end of it, but rather pick and select the pieces of music they want to listen, throw them to the playlist, and they are not in the right order as the artist or the composer has meant them to be. So do you feel like this is a blow for the progressive rock, some sort of obstacle that is hard to somehow to omit because of this fact that progressive pieces have got a start and a finish and some sort of story to tell rather than being just a little piece?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one, isn't it? I'm trying to imagine taking Beethoven's fifth and swapping the first and the fourth movement round just because I fancied it. I mean, it would seem very strange to me, but maybe not to some people. I don't know. Look, I think if someone wants to make a playlist and they happen to like, in my case, for example, one song from Wildlands and one song from Alchemy and one song from Pendragon and from Marina, well, great. At least they're listening to stuff that I've done. And, what am I to complain? It's up to them what they listen to. If they want to understand what they're listening to, then they need context. And I would say, well, look, if you're going to listen to Hound of the Baskervilles, then you kind of need to listen to the whole thing because it's a story and it has a beginning and a middle and an end. And that applies to Wildland. In fact, actually, it applies to virtually everything I've written. But, I can sort of sympathize that not everyone wants to kind of wade through the whole thing every time. I think I've probably got favorites I could probably put together if I was going to choose music of my own to listen to, which I don't tend to do until I have to learn it. But basically, I would choose certain things from certain bits. it's up to the listener what they do. Yes, of course, for it to make sense, they need to hear the whole thing. But maybe they can listen to the whole thing one day and then just their favorite bits another day. Why not?
Okay. Throughout its history, progressive rock has had ups and downs. And do you feel that in the era of overstimulation, during which people's attention span is counted in seconds rather than minutes, there is a place for in the future for progressive rock and long pieces of atmospheric music. So, in your opinion, what will the future progressive rock music be?
Well, I think that progressive rock, probably like quite a few other genres of music, will remain, as we would call it, underground. But every now and again, it will poke its head up above the parapet. So, a piece of music will get chosen to throw into some film that then becomes a massive hit, and all of a sudden, everyone's saying, "Hey, what's this progressive rock thing?" And then it'll become not exactly popular, but it'll become noticed for a period of time, and then people will start, criticizing it for all the same reasons they always criticize it, and then it'll disappear back down. One thing I think, though, is it'll keep going. I think there'll always be room, because I think it fulfills a particular need for a particular approach to listening and to writing, which you're not going to find in other genres of music. So from that point of view, I don't have any doubts that, in 100 years' time, some form of progressive rock will still be around. But I think it'll progress. But I think it'll also, it will be an organic thing. Sometimes it'll be more, sometimes it'll be less. But yes, absolutely. I quite like the idea. I'm hoping that in 150 years' time, someone will discover an old bit. Have you heard this thing? It's by Nolan. Died in 2090. Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be great. Why not? But yeah, I don't think it's going to go away.
Okay, and do you think the subjects that are, brought up in such pieces are going to be, changed, modified? Because as I have mentioned before, progressive rock, I believe, has it in its DNA, the existential dilemmas and indulgences. But even now we can find progressive pieces of music, for example, from Riverside, that is about current times and current problems rather than the endless problems of mankind, right?
Mm-hmm. And what you think that's a justifiable thing? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I think it's whatever you want to write about. If you're a band, there's usually, as a band, you find a kind of, I think certainly the bands I know of, you find a particular sort of approach to how you write. Whether it happens to be kind of heavyweight fantasy or perhaps a lot more real, maybe dealing with all the sort of realities of life. I've always liked it to be slightly one step away from the reality of life, but on the other hand, whilst keeping a hold on it as well. But different people do different things. No, I think there's room for anything. I mean, that's the thing about the rock, is I think it is. There's plenty of space for all of this stuff.
Okay, I get it. So there is a place for all kinds of subjects and matters to be brought up in such music.
Yeah. So.
And I've got a question strictly connected to the title of my presentation and my article, Romanticism in a Time Capsule, IDEST, Progressive Rock as the Gateway to the Ultimate Artistic Expression. So progressive music has multiple shapes and sizes, as we have just established. And I believe that one of the characteristics of progressive music is that rock artists are free to express themselves the way they truly choose to, without being bound by decorum of a certain way of composing and music creation. For example, Steven Wilson has said that he never used traditional writing traditional ways of writing down music like classical composers, despite the fact that his pieces are in many cases very complicated. So do you think then that progressive music, progressive rock, symphonic rock, is the gateway to the ultimate artistic expression?
I imagine that there are Perhaps there's more than one gateway, but it could be a gateway. I was thinking, I mean, that whole thing of writing the music down, it's true. When I first came into the world of progressive rock or just rock music, I remember I said, hey, let's form a band. Yeah, great idea. And we sort of literally, it was my last year at school. And we found some guy who played drums and a guy who played a bit of bass. And we're all kind of beginners, really. And then I said, okay, well, so we organized a rehearsal. And I said, I'll write a piece of music. So I wrote a piece of music and I turned up at the rehearsal. I said, right, here we go then. That's the guitar part. There's your, and I'd written it all out on manuscript paper. And I just saw these four guys just staring at the manuscript paper. I might as well have just given them, I don't know, something in Chinese. I mean, none of them could read music. So that was kind of like the first time I thought, okay, right, I don't. And since then, very rarely do I get asked for like a manuscript version. Although, funnily enough, now that I've moved into the world of sort of musicals a little bit, that has been something where it's been useful sometimes to write the parts out so that the singers can come in and the part. And Wildlands is completely transcribed because we wanted to be able to have a choir that could follow the music, the soloist could follow the music. So we have what we call a piano score version. And it was really nice for me anyway to see these things in manuscript, because for many years I've just have to kind of say it goes like this, and that's how it works. As a gateway to expression, I think there are many gateways, but there's certainly no reason why this genre of music cannot be that as well.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that musical education and being somehow oriented in the whole way of writing down music, the classical way and other rules, is helping the band or somehow limiting maybe?
I think it helped me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that those rules have to develop and progress just like any other thing. So the rules of well, let's say loosely classical music, for whatever that means, have to kind of move on, and we inject all the various things that have come from the world of rock and jazz and pop and everything else. So there's like a new set of rules out there, but an understanding of the fundamental. It's like a language. Music is a language, right? And if you're learning a language, generally speaking, you have to understand a certain amount of vocabulary and grammar and syntax and all the kind of things that come with it. And then you have to understand a few basic rules. So you can say, I am this, and he is that, and she is that, and we are that. To me, it's no different with music. If you understand some of the fundamental rules of music and music theory, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. I know people who write music who basically write as a virtue. It's kind of a process of elimination. So they'll try something and it just doesn't sound right. But I could tell them why, but it's not my place to. So they'll try something else. And because they don't know, they don't understand what it is they're doing. Now, they may well end up with an amazing song. So this is not a judgment. I'm merely saying that for me, to be able to kind of understand what it is I'm doing helps me to get somewhere more quickly, which enables me to probably work more effectively, perhaps. But that's just my choice.
Okay. So I believe that I have asked you all the questions that I have prepared. So I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity to speak with you, Mr. Nolan. I believe that the insights that you have provided will enhance my presentation very much. And I hope that you've also found my questions at least a bit interesting and you've enjoyed yourself as much as I have.
I have said this has been the most interesting interview I've done for years. Trust me. I find questions very much.
Oh, I am honored. And I
are you coming to see Pendragon in May?
Yes, I am. I am going to see Pendragon in May. Yes, everybody's VIP gig in Zabrze, CK Wiatrak, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, make sure you come and sort of say hi, and remind me. Remember we talked. Because I'll probably, when you do gigs, you tend to get into like a cotton wool sort of little zone, and it's easy to kind of, I could walk past you, and it's not intended, but it's just because I'm not seeing properly. So just make sure you come and say hi.
All right. Certainly I will. And so thank you very much. I'll keep in touch with you, I believe, just to let you know about the article and how the presentation has gone. And I will certainly keep you on the loop.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And I would also like to tell you that I have been also running my own progressive project, which is called Waxworks. It is very much inspired by your own approach towards music. And yeah, so this is something that I believe it is a beginning of my way of understanding music and being somehow more familiar with it. I've got my own SoundCloud thing and so on. So yeah, and I basically do everything on this album. So guitar, piano, keyboards, singing, drums, lyrics, basically everything. So uh, I've got an additional question to you because what is the importance of having band members actually? Is it better to just do everything by yourself, or do you also draw inspiration from people around you, or is it just coming from the inside of you?
Well, I'm between you and me, I'm happiest working alone,
Mm.
personally. However, for the bands to work like Arena, having that sort of other set of people to push against means that the result will be different. So it's probably a good thing from a band point of view, but certainly for all the projects like Wildlands and the musicals and everything else, pretty much. I'm much happier just working on my own. Yeah, because I just feel that you can waste a lot of time arguing with people about
Yeah,
stuff.
true. That, yeah.
Doing that. But I will do it. You know, I do write. I wrote with Oliver Wakeman for those projects. I worked with Eric Bouillet with the Medici project, and obviously I worked with Mick Pointer and John Mitchell and whatever, for Arena. So there are, but yes, I mean, I'm at my happiest working on my own. So I understand where you're coming from.
Oh, I understand. Thank you. So once I create something of bigger value, I allow myself to send it to you.
You should. Yeah, absolutely. And I will listen, I promise.
Oh, thank you very much. So one final question, maybe. Are you planning on returning to Poland with Arena or any other project of yours?
Yes, I hope so. I mean, there's a few things in the air that are possible. I mean, this Medici project might find its way over there. I think that Arena, if we do, there's supposed to be like a 30th anniversary tour next year. If that happens, then I'd be surprised if we don't play in Poland. I'm sure we will. So yes, I think there are things on the horizon there. You should come over here, and you should come and see the Wildlands show in
Oh,
England.
I wish I would. So when is it?
It's a weekend. It's a whole thing, because on the Friday night we're doing scenes from the musicals that I've written. So there's a whole kind of extravagance of costume and music going on there from Alchemy and She and King's Ransom and whatever. And then lunchtime on the Saturday, there's a kind of like an acoustic show where I'll do various progressive rock stuff from Arena, Shadowland, Strangers on a Train, as well as musicals and stuff from various singers. And then on the Saturday evening is when we do the song of the Wildlands. But all through the day, there's going to be various sort of Viking things going on around the mead hall as well. Games that you can take part in, food, drink, merchandise. It's a whole. I think I don't know if you sort of see my Facebook or whatever.
Oh yes, I do. Yes.
Well, it's the advert went up yesterday for that.
It's in September, right?
6th and
7th. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I believe that is the exact date when I'm having this conference. So,
Never mind.
so unfortunately, I will not be able to. But should such an event occur in the future, I will certainly come.
Well, if this one works, then I fully intend to do other ones. I mean, this one is based very much around the Viking theme. The next one I was thinking of doing was a weekend of progressive rock with various musicians and whatever. And I will do the musicals and various things as well. So yes, there are plans to do more. But anyway, this one has to succeed for me to be able to do any more.
All right. Yes. Yeah. So I wish you good luck with that, but I am certain that everything is going to go according to plan.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And so I also apologize for any broken English on my side. My hands have been a bit shaking, and I hope I wasn't stuttering too much. Yeah.
No, I understood everything you said.
Oh, I'm glad. So, all right. So I believe that I've nothing more to ask you.
Okay.
Apart from expressing my wish that I would like to listen to the Visitor song at least once in my life. So, yeah, from Arena.
The Visitor. Oh, live.
The Visitor, yeah, live. Yes, live.
Oh, okay. Do you mean the whole album or just the song?
Yeah, the whole album too, as well. Yeah.
Okay. You know, we did a tour. We actually did an anniversary tour a few years ago, where we did the Visitor again. So unfortunately, I doubt very much we're likely to perform the whole album again. But the song does come and go in our set list. So yeah, I'm sure it'll appear.
All right. So once again, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I wish you good luck with all your projects. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I'll keep you on the loop with both the article, the presentation, and the project of mine.
Okay, brilliant. Yes, nice one. Well, thank you for doing the interview. Nice to meet you online.
Okay. Yeah, online. Thank you very much.
See you then. Bye-bye.
See you.